everybody and welcome to the channel. I am trying to hide my really bad hair day that I'm having with my Hell on Earth hat, but try and ignore it. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 untraditional things about our wedding day. So the first thing that was quite untraditional, I suppose, is that we actually started planning our wedding before we were even engaged. A lot of couples, obviously, they get engaged, they maybe enjoy their engagement for a little bit, and then they jump into planning the wedding. With us, we were like planning the wedding before we were even engaged. It actually all started during the COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020. And we weren't living together at that point. It was our kind of way of trying to feel close to each other, even though we physically weren't really seeing each other. So yeah, it was like this really lovely thing that came out of lockdown, was that we started to plan quite a chunk of our wedding, and that's just one of the things that we did that really helped at times during really low points during the COVID-19 lockdowns in the UK. The second thing that's quite untraditional is that we'd already had a baby before we got married. Obviously, traditionally, you are together for quite some time and then you get engaged and then you get married and then you settle down and have a baby and things like that. The thing is, you guys, I feel like the most traditional thing about our wedding day was my wedding dress. Everything else was just the complete opposite of traditional. It was just not the norm of a traditional wedding. It didn't fit the mold of a traditional wedding, and we really didn't want that. But yeah, I mean, our relationship in general, like from start to now to present day, has been unusual, and it has been definitely not the traditional way to do things. Although it was a little bit like unexpected, we weren't particularly trying to get pregnant at the time, but things happen for a reason, and both me and my husband Simon are firm believers in that. Why do we have to get married and then have a baby? Things happen, and just because it's not the norm or tradition, I think people look at it as a bad thing. It's totally not. You do whatever you want, whatever feels right in your relationship at the time. Doesn't matter whether you're married or not, doesn't matter of an order of things, who cares? Number 3 is that my dad didn't walk me down the aisle. It's just tradition that the father of the bride walks his daughter down the aisle on the wedding day. Not here. My mum walked me down the aisle, and I think that is reflective of how close me and my mum are and how close we have remained despite all of the stresses, despite everything that has happened. In my eyes, she deserved to walk me down the aisle. She deserved to be there during that very special moment, and that is a moment that I'll always hold very dear to my heart. Number 4 is that we did not have a hen or a stag do prior to the wedding. We were never that bothered. That was like one of the things that we had stuck to for a long time. Since the very start of arranging our wedding, we were just like, do you know what? I don't think we're that bothered about a hen or a stag. I hate the labels that hen and stag do's get. A lot of the time it kind of gets labeled as your last night of freedom. If you're going into a marriage, in my opinion anyway, if you're going into a marriage and you see the night before the wedding as your last night of freedom, like, ugh. A wedding should not be seen as prison. To me, it's all just absolute crap. We didn't have any speeches. Originally, the plan was that maybe the best man would do the speeches, but he then turned around and kind of said, well, no, I'm not really, comfortable doing it. I don't feel confident to do it, which is completely fine. And then after the best man kind of turned down the offer to do a speech, me and Simon kind of thought to ourselves, well, why are we bothered about speeches? And so from then onwards, we were just like, we don't want to put any pressure on anybody to feel like they have to speak, or we don't want anyone to get worried about speaking. So we just said no to the speeches, and off they went. Number 6 is that we didn't marry in a church. We didn't have a religious celebration or a religious ceremony, and that is perfectly fine for us because neither me or my partner are religious. We don't go to church every Sunday. We don't follow a religion, anything like that. So to us, it was just not necessary. Next one is that we did not have any bridesmaids. And this was a big deal for me from the start, pretty much. I was like, I'm not having any bridesmaids. And I've mentioned this on the channel before. You don't have to have bridesmaids at your wedding. Like, to me, sometimes, depending on the age of the bridesmaids as well, it can cause a whole lot of drama and a whole lot of extra stress that you just do not need when you're organising a wedding. I did not want a large bridal party, but on top of that, I didn't want to give people labels. The only person who really had a role or a label at our wedding was the best man. But other than that, everybody was just our wedding guests. We didn't want that kind of hierarchy in terms of the guests, or that kind of nasty, feisty, like bitchiness basically amongst the guests, where I'm better than you because I'm, I don't know, a bridesmaid. It's just not my cup of tea. I don't like that kind of like snarky, rude kind of behaviour that can, not always, but it can happen. And it just is not my cup of tea. We didn't want any of that kind of like people feeling crap about themselves and questioning their importance to us just because they weren't given some kind of important title or important role or anything like that. Also, there was no bouquet of flowers. I did not carry any bouquet of flowers, neither did any of our guests. Mainly just because I thought to myself, like, why? All I'll be doing, it'll just get on my nerves all day because I'll be carrying it around down the aisle looking really awkward, and then I'll just be like, I don't know, here, you have it. And then they'll be like burdened with it all day. And I just thought to myself, do you know what? I'll be paying so much money for literally something that's really gonna irritate me all day. So that idea went out of the window pretty early on in terms of the wedding planning. Next up is that there was no massive celebration after the wedding ceremony itself. A lot of people, they go off and they like drink into the early hours of the morning. Us, we always wanted it to be more about the food than the alcohol. You know, I think a lot of it is that we didn't want people to come to the wedding just because it's an excuse for people to get drunk. That's not what we wanted. We wanted the people to be there just because they wanted to support us and our marriage and what we were doing. We literally just had a massive meal. We got overloaded with food, you guys. The last one, whew, gosh, I feel like I've been doing non-stop talking. The last one is that we wrote our own vows. We didn't follow the traditional vows. Obviously, there are certain things during a wedding ceremony that you have to say. Legally, you've just got to say certain things. But when it came to our actual vows, we wrote them ourselves and we spoke from the heart. We didn't want to have the traditional kind of vows. We wanted something different. We wanted to speak from the heart. We wanted something unique and special to us as a couple, and that's exactly what we did. So that is 10 things that made our wedding day untraditional and not follow the norms of what people kind of would expect, like the molds of tradition. You don't have to have a traditional wedding. You can do whatever you want. If you want bridesmaids, if you don't want bridesmaids, if you want to get married in a church or you don't, or you want this and not that. Your wedding day should be about you and what you and your partner want. It doesn't matter whether it's tradition or not. Your wedding has to be something you want and you've got to be happy with it. So who cares if it's traditional or not? I don't. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave this video a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I very much hope to see you in my next video. Bye everybody.